Hey guys, this is Miss Mariscal and I am here to show you how to take an object and make it huge. Enjoy! So first I want to show you a bunch of different types of objects that are options for scaling up. You can see there's everything from like kind of square, boxy kind of objects like the switch and the boxes for mac and cheese and the Kleenex. Got a box of cards and even my phone, or we've got floss here that would work really well. You could do objects that are kind of round, like cylinder shapes, sort of like any of the pens or pencils, markers. The craft paint here is a round object or a cylinder, or a can of some kind would be great for this. We've got some kind of in-between shapes here. These would be not quite cylinders, but closer to cones. So we want to make sure that if we're measuring these, we're measuring them correctly. And we also have some more flat items, like the candy here. The Nerds box could go in this category, but we've got some Halloween candy packages here that are just a little bit flatter. They're not quite 2D because they do have a little bit of width to them. So what you see here are some drawings of these objects. So I have my mac and cheese box and my Swedish fish package on one side, and then I also have my LaCroix and my styling gel on the other side here, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them. So the mac and cheese box is what's called a rectangular prism. It has 3 measurements that you need to record, okay? You need to record length, width, and height. And you can see right here with my drawing, I actually tried to make sure I got it pretty detailed just so I kind of have an idea of where everything belongs on the box. And then this is where I'm going to record my measurements once I get to there. The Swedish fish package right here, because it's mostly flat, I'm calling it a rectangle. When you measure a rectangle, you only have to worry about length and height, okay? And I will record those objects measurements here. With my LaCroix can, it's actually known as a cylinder. So a cylinder is kind of like a rectangular prism, except instead of having boxy corners and edges, it's got a round kind of shape here. It's got a circle on the top and the bottom. So we actually need to measure diameter this time instead of length and width. And then we still have to measure height for that. And finally, our got-to-be glued spiking gel is kind of a weird shape. It's sort of like a cylinder, but it's also sort of like our Swedish fish package, how it has kind of that funky edge on the flat part. So I'm calling that something close to a cone, or cone-ish, cone-like. Either way, you measure it similar to a cylinder, okay? You still need to know what the height is of the object, but then you also have that round cap at the bottom that you need to measure the diameter for. And just in case you're wondering what diameter is, imagine that this is the end of the cap here. Here's my LaCroix can for reference. You want to measure all the way across, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a little bit. here are my measurements. So with the length, I have it all labeled here. I have L, W, and H, and then I have it written out: length, width, and height. Same thing with the rest of them here, L and H. With my can here, I have diameter and height. You could change this to a D instead of writing out diameter. And then with this one, with our tube, I actually realized we missed a measurement when I initially drew this. So I actually measured a width here, a height, and then the diameter down at the bottom, because it is a lot wider at the top than it is at the bottom. It's a good thing to keep in mind. And then I adjusted that. I added a width down here at the bottom.
Now it's time for some simple math. I'm going to be taking all the dimensions of my different objects and multiplying them by 3, and I'm also going to multiply them by 5. The reason why I'm doing this is so I can get a range of possible sizes that my objects could be if I made them larger. I am using my iPad as a calculator. You're certainly welcome to use a calculator because it's an easy tool to just get the job done.
So I want to show you, it's okay if you make a mistake with your math, so long as you go back and you double check and correct it later. For example, when I first started doing my math for my mac and cheese box here, I wasn't paying attention and I did 3 times 3 and got 9 instead of 3 times 7. Okay, that would have been a big deal when I started cutting my cardboard. It wouldn't have made any sense. It would have been completely the wrong sizes. So make sure, you know, if you make a mistake with your math, it's always better to start with a new sheet of paper. I put a post-it note on top of my correct math and measurements listed on there.
So when I was measuring my mac and cheese box, I took those measurements and I multiplied them by both 3, and I also took those same measurements and multiplied them by 5 so I can get an idea of what a good size for this sculpture might be. When I multiplied it by 3, the biggest measurement, which was the height from here to here, that came out to be 21 inches. So 21 inches, just so you guys can see, here's my yardstick. It's about this big. It's not huge. It's definitely a manageable size, but it might be a little bit too small for a pop art sculpture. So I'm going to go and look at my times 5. If I took the height and I multiplied it by 5, I ended up with 35 inches. You guys, that is almost the entire yardstick. It goes to here. So keep that in mind. This might be the size I want to work on with my partner. Anything that's about the length of a yardstick is probably a really, really good thought for an object that's really boxy like this. You can definitely go larger than a yardstick, but please make sure you're picking a project that is ambitious as you need it to be. Especially if you're working with a group of 3, feel free to go larger.
So here is my final sketchbook. I'll give you a closer look here. I've got all of my original measurements as well as the scaled up sizes listed. I have all my sketches of the different objects as well. And just to recap, make sure you choose your object and measure it. Make sure you sketch it as well. You need to have your height, length, width, and diameter depending on the object you choose. And then also make sure you multiply by 3 and by 5. Just so you have an idea of what the appropriate size for you will be. You need to choose a size that is appropriate for storage and for the amount of time you have allowed to work on this project. Have fun, guys!